You finally decide to change, you start putting in the work, you do the new goals, all the new habits, you eat well, start the new project, and then all of a sudden you go back to your old self. And then maybe a few weeks later, you get another spark of motivation, a little inspiration, and then you get back onto the goals, the habits, the routine, the projects, everything new that you started. But then once again, you revert back to your old self. This cycle, it's not random. It's actually self-sabotage. And a lot of the times we do it without even knowing it. So that's why I want to talk about in today's video, why we actually self-sabotage even when we want to change so much inside of our life, and how to actually break this cycle. So that way you can see permanent change in your life, not just like small little ounces of change, but something that will actually have a complete 360 in your life. Because if you're like me, you probably started and stopped so many times. Just know it's not your fault, because everybody does this. But once you understand the root cause of why you actually self-sabotage, by the end of this video, you're gonna walk away with so much confidence and actually changing your life long term. So I want to get right into it. First of all, why do we actually do it? The first reason why we do it is because our brain, it's actually wired for comfort, not for growth. Now, of course, part of your brain, it wants to grow, right? That's why we crave goals and milestones, and we always want to be achieving something new and different. However, the majority of our brain, it's actually wired to keep us safe, to keep us protected, to make sure we are not in danger. Now, one example I want to use for this entire video when it comes to like change, one big change that I wanted in my life was financial freedom, making so much more money, because I was always broke. And I'm sure a lot of you also want that big change in your life. Like, you don't want to be worrying about money anymore. So when it comes to your brain wired for comfort, not for growth, in the aspect of money, if you're used to living paycheck to paycheck and the only money that you're spending on is the basic necessities like rent, food, maybe it's clothes, it's gas, and all of a sudden you have this idea, you have this inspiration where you want to start your own business. Maybe you want to become a content creator, and you see there is an event locally that you want to go to. Now, of course, this event is not free, and you have to pay like $199 to get in. Even though you really want to go to that event, your brain craves a familiar pattern. Therefore, since you only spend money on the necessities, your brain is going to go like, oh, that's too expensive, that's too much, just start next month, you don't have to go right now, like you have so many other busy things going on, and thus you miss the opportunity to actually grow and potentially double the income that you actually want. And trust me, this has happened to me so many times, because once again, it's not the fact that you don't want to go to the event, it's not the fact that you don't want to learn and you don't want to grow, but since we are so accustomed and used to staying safe and doing the repeated pattern of, once again, just spending money on things that we know we need, not things that will actually grow, we're always going to be self-sabotaging ourselves. Now, the second reason of why we self-sabotage is because it's kind of like a loss of identity. If we've always associated ourselves with being broke, struggling, living paycheck to paycheck, it can feel very scary to step into a new identity. Like success, it almost doesn't feel like you. Like subconsciously, you will pull yourself back no matter how much you want that thing. Now, this actually happened to me when I bought my first brand new Mercedes car. I had a complete loss of identity, and it actually ended up being a really bad experience for me, because the day I bought the car, I had to take it back into the shop less than 24 hours later because there was something wrong with the car. And I manifested and I self-sabotaged this process because I was so afraid of buying something that was so expensive and I didn't feel like I was worthy of it. And what happened was I built my business, I made so much money, I had enough money to buy this car, but in the process of me buying it, within, like the weeks of me looking at it, making decisions, getting a loan for the car, blah, blah, I always had the fear of like, am I actually going to be able to like keep this car? Like, should I even be buying this car? It's so expensive. I always buy used cars. Like, is it even worth it? Am I going to drive it? So I had such a negative connotation with me buying this car because I was actually buying it from my old identity, not my new identity. So of course, when I bought it, hours later, the engine light went off and I had to bring it back into the shop, and everything was fine. It turned out okay. But this is the perfect example of self-sabotage. Even when you get something, when you have that loss of identity and you don't actually step into the new version of yourself that can keep the new thing, bad things will happen because subconsciously you are sabotaging yourself. And then last thing, before we get into how to actually break this cycle, the last reason why you're self-sabotaging is because you are afraid of the unknown. Fear of the unknown, which is the most probably common reason why we self-sabotage. So if you want to be financially free, that is honestly entering a brand new territory. You don't know what is going to happen if you take the jump and you take the leap of faith and you start the business. You don't know whether you're going to make money. You don't know if you're not going to make money. And your brain actually starts to panic and it starts to ask itself, can I actually do this? Like, can I actually handle this? I know this happened to me when I graduated college in 2018. I did not apply to a job because I wanted to start my own business. I put, honestly, all my eggs into this basket, and my brain, my body, it went berserk. It went so wild because I stepped into the unknown and I had no ties left behind. So my brain, it freaked out for a few weeks. It was like, okay, are we gonna do this? Are we not gonna do this? And eventually my body kept up. But a lot of the times we self-sabotage just because being in that state of not knowing what is gonna happen, it's scary, right? We don't like to feel that way. We wanna stay in safety. But that is, I wanna say, one of the number one reasons why we actually self-sabotage. Now, the truth is, self-sabotage, it's not a weakness. And it might feel like a weakness, especially since we make the decision, we want to go after, we want to change our life, and then we get scared and we revert back to our old self. But it's actually just protection. And that protection, it's needed. And we want to know the difference between us protecting ourselves from danger versus us protecting ourselves from growth. Because that protection, it's always going to limit you from what you are actually capable of doing. So now that we know why we actually self-sabotage, the real understanding of that word on its own, let's get into how to actually stop the cycle and break free from the self-sabotage. Okay, so number one, this might sound super contradicting, especially if you know me, especially if you watch all my other videos, but the first thing I'm gonna say is do not set huge goals. When you set huge goals, your brain, your nervous system, your body, it goes into shock, and it's really hard for your body to get on board with the new goals. So what you actually want to do instead is create a set of new habits that you can start to identify and start to every single day that will become a match for the new goal that you actually want to create. And I always say you can have like big audacious goals, but don't focus on getting the goal. Focus on becoming the person that automatically naturally gets the goal. So for an example, for me, a few years ago, one of my biggest goals was making $100,000 in a year. But for me back then, I was only making $500 a month. So it didn't feel like I could actually get that goal. So no matter how much action I took, I always reverted back to my old self. So I decided to actually break that goal down to hitting $10,000 in a month. Now that still felt like a stretch, like a good stretch, but I could still wrap my head around that specific goal. So I made that goal, and then instead of just thinking about that goal every single day, I start to write down what specific habits can I commit to doing every single day that would naturally lead me to that goal. And that was in the beginning when I was starting my business. So some of the goals that I wrote down was posting every single day, selling my products, having dedicated time to learn about business every single day. I basically became the version of me that was once again a match for that goal instead of reaching that goal from my old self. And I want to say this is one of the biggest things that I learned over the course of the last few years doing personal development, mindset work, and always growing to the next level is a lot of the times we try to get the goal from our old self, not from our new self. So if we can create habits that will automatically lead us to that brand new identity, it's going to be so much easier for us to actually reach that goal and stay consistent with it, not just be on this balance of, okay, I'm going to start this and I'm going to focus on the goal and then I'm gonna revert back to my old self. When you can build habits, habits stick, goals don't. And that will be a much easier path for you to actually once again get to your goal. Now, the second way to break the cycle is catch the sabotaging thought, reaction, or action in the moment and replace it with an empowering action. I always say you can like sit down and you can do all of the reprogramming work. Like you can write down all of the limiting beliefs that you have. You can reframe the limiting beliefs. You can read about limiting beliefs and self-sabotaging and mindset work. But the best way that you can actually change and break this cycle is catching yourself doing it in the moment and making that reframe. So let's say for an example, you make the decision that you want to become a content creator like me. You want to build the business, you want to make your own money, you want to work for yourself. And you see that you don't really have like the equipment to do it. Maybe you want to buy a brand new ring light. Like you go on Amazon or maybe on TikTok, you saw someone, using this new ring light and it's $39.99. Now, remember, maybe you're used to living paycheck to paycheck. You only spend money on the necessities. Your brain, it might tell you, oh, once again, like you don't need to buy this right now. You can still record on your phone in front of a window. You don't really need this light. Like start next week. You don't need to buy it right now. In that moment, you want to notice that is a self-sabotaging thought and you want to reframe it with a brand new one. So instead of entertaining and just succumbing to, oh yeah, I'll just do it later, or I'll just do it next week, or I'll buy it when I get a bonus, whatever you think of, you want to tell yourself, actually, I'm so excited to invest into this ring light because I know this is actually going to allow me to double my income, triple my income, finally make it as a real content creator. And also it's going to be so much more exciting and so much more fun for me to create content because I now have this new tool to use. And you can tell the difference in energy from this like lack state versus this abundant state. And that's like the biggest thing that I also want you to take away is when you're taking action and when you're having thoughts, you always want to make sure it's coming from abundant state, not a lack state. And once again, catch yourself because there will be many times your brain will try to trick you because once again, it's wired to keep you safe. But when you can catch yourself in the moment and do the reframe, that's when you actually break the cycle. Now, the third thing when it comes to breaking the cycle is truly choosing to make an identity shift. And this is where you are accepting that you're letting go of your old self. Like you are not even associating yourself with that person anymore. And the thing is, it's okay to like kind of go through and like grieve that person because you're probably that person for a very long time. But I will say there will always be an epiphany somebody has in their life where they're just ready for change. And when you choose to step into this new identity, it's not even about asking yourself, what do I do now? But it's more about who do I need to become? Because who you become is going to be the long-term path of what you actually get and what you actually do. Because going back to how I originally started this video, like you might be doing all the actions and maybe you are doing all the right actions, but you might be doing the actions once again from your old self, not from your new self. Intention is everything. So for me, when I wanted to start my business, I didn't ask myself like, how do I make money? What's the best business to start? What do I do? What product do I sell? Of course, like I figured all of those things out. But the first thing I really asked myself was like who is the version of me who is already financially free? Like she's already a business owner. What would her actions be? What would her thought process be? What would her identity be like? What would her belief systems? What would her habits be like? And I started to train myself to be her. And once again, naturally, I became that person. And when you start to approach life and make changes and go after your goals like that, it doesn't feel like resistance. It doesn't feel like you're running a marathon and then you stop and you revert back to your old self. It feels like you're actually on a journey of real change. And that is how you see long-term process, not just like short-term bursts of energy that like one day you get a lot of motivation, you start, and then like a week later you stop. So the next time you catch yourself in a self-sabotaging moment or action, I want you to remember this is not actually you, okay? This is your old self, your old identity fighting for survival. But you're becoming unforgettable. You're becoming a brand new version of you, and you do not need to entertain your old self. You can notice it, bring awareness to it, but gently do a reframe and just know your new identity, it is already you. I love you so much. Let me know what was your biggest takeaway in the comments, and also let me know what videos do you want me to create next, because as always, I always love to make sure I'm creating videos to help you become the most unforgettable version of yourself. And if you haven't watched this video, make sure to watch it next. And until next week's episode, make sure that you stay unforgettable.